Hello. Uh, this is my these are my IDs. This is my school one, and this is my Georgia license. Okay, so today I'm going to be presenting my presentation on rape. Okay, so rape is an interpersonal crime. Um, and interpersonal violence. It includes like violence done like domestic abuse or done when you're a child and stuff like that. It's usually like done by like people that you know. And yeah, an estimated 6% to 15% of women have experienced domestic violence in the past 12 months. It's a crazy number. And during their lifetime, it's about 28% to 54% in their lifetime. Um, and these interpersonal violence does come with long-term effects, and that could be physical effects or mental effects. Okay. So what is rape? So it's basically just whenever you force someone to have sex with you without consent. That's it. Just no consent. If you have sex with no consent, then it's rape. Um, it can lead to bad trauma, like things like PTSD. It could give. It's known to give people severe anxiety and severe depression, depending on um how they deal with the rape. So, um, yeah, and there's a lot of victim blaming involved at times with rape. So, consent. So, consent, it can be implied or explicit uh, by the definition we have now of it. But it's not always indefinite. Like, if someone consents to it, it's not always indefinite. And if they back out, they can do it at any time. And if they do, and then they're still forced to have sex, then it's rape, even if they consented earlier on. And that definition is always changing. Back in the past, it was if you were, let's say in medieval Europe, if you were a a man was forced to marry, or a woman was forced to marry a man, she has to have sex with him, and it's consent automatically. It's not she can't um say no or anything, even though by our definition now it's rape, but back then it wasn't. And lately I've been seeing a lot about how rape is there's a lot about how like consent can't be implied anymore, and someone has to explicitly say yes. I've seen a lot of like little games and stuff like on your phone. It'll be like if you consent to sex, then put your fingers on the thing, and then the other person has to put their fingers. I've seen stuff like that. Just a bunch of new developments regarding that. um and so the people that can't consent are minors and people that are cognitively disabled, for obvious reasons. Obviously, they can't, think for themselves sometimes, and it's like if someone was under the influence, it's the same type of thing by law. Um, and there are different forms of rape depending on who's committing the rape, who the victim is, and the actions involved in the rape. Um, so one of the types is diminished capacity rape, which is someone who their mental capacity, they can't consent to sex, so they're raped. So like in the last slide, it could be anybody disabled, cognitively disabled, minors. I'm not minors, not minors. Anybody cognitively disabled or under the influence. So, and those have their own little subcategories to them, like diminished capacity rape. A lot of time is done with like date rape, drugs, and stuff like that. And age related rape, that's the one with anybody below the minimum age. That's not the minimum age of consent. That's just the minimum age of just sex. and different. So if someone has sex with someone over the minimum age but under the minimum age, I mean over the minimum age but under the age of consent, then in some jurisdictions it is considered rape depending on like who did the rape. It's all just depends on jurisdictions. Okay? Marital rape. So that's another form of rape, and it occurs in couples that are married, and it is people that are raped that are married are 2 times likely to suffer from physical injury compared to people that aren't. And this is kind of the same thing. So marital, like back in Europe, this would be considered back in the old Europe, medieval times. It would have been considered rape for those two married. It would have been considered marital rape. Excuse me. Usually it's committed out of revenge, and usually during or after a breakup. That's just what usually happens. You know, it's not always like that, but that's how it usually happens. And the goal of the person doing the raping is to humiliate their spouse, to degrade them, to punish them. And at times it can lead to homicide. Some sometimes it gets out of hand, and the spouse or something dies. That can occur sometimes because it's such a violent act. It's not like the other rapes. It's done by a partner, which also leads to a lot of mistrust in the relationship. A lot of a lot of victim blaming also. The spouse telling them that it's their fault that they did that blah blah blah, stuff like that. Um, and it also many times leads to the person raped to commit suicide because they don't know how to get out of the situation. So much fair. Um, Date rape. So this is when you force someone to have sex with you while you're on a date. So this comes from a lot of like expectations of like going to a date and then being on the date and someone assuming that, oh, after the date we're gonna go back to my place and we're gonna have sexual intercourse. But that's just like a like a gendered expectation, yeah, of what we have in society. And many like feminists and stuff are trying to stop that expectation that people always have. And then sometimes in date rape drugs are used um and it make people like not able to function and stuff. um some of those drugs can be like Rofinol, GHB, and hydrobutyric acid. Sometimes could be any of those. The street names for some of those would be like liquid ecstasy, or that's the one that comes in the liquid form. That's what GHB would be. Some people put Rufinol, which is a Rofinol. I don't know how to pronounce that. But it's like the pill, the roofie, I guess, is what they call that on the street. So rape is also used as a tool for war, as a weapon, and they just go hand in hand now. People just consider them hand in hand, like, oh, if there's a war, there's going to be a lot of rapes. um, armies will use this as just like a tactic almost, just to like bring down the other people that they just conquered or something. Just in many ways. The worst rapes were done in World War II, and they were done by the Japanese army. They're like things like the rape of Nanking and stuff like that. Just horrible, horrible. Just and then one particular event happened done by the Russian army as they're advancing into Germany. One woman got raped by the Russian army, so it's not just that. The villains, the Axis powers. It could be any. It's usually any of the sides of the war. In this case, it was the Allied power. So the rape crisis in Congo. So the civil war that started in Congo in 1998, it sparked up all these rapes that come along with war, and it became a crisis in Congo. The government did this on purpose, as a war tactic, in Congo. um, um, and it's led to many organizations being created in Congo just to prevent the rape. That's how bad like it's gotten over there. I'm sorry, my throat is really dry. Um, and the rape is used in massive scale by both sides of the war of the civil war that was going on, and and it's affected more than a quarter million of women over there in Congo, which is that's an insane number just for Congo is not that big of a country. Well, but still, like, it's a lot. It's like every soldier's doing it. Rape blame. So a lot of times, people raped are blamed, or sometimes they blame themselves for being raped, which is a self blame. Um, so it's just like how it all depends on the mental psyche of the girl. If they are more depressed, or if they're more depressed for what happened, then it's usually because they're blaming themselves, or figuring out ways like, oh, how I could have prevented this from happening. Just it's all a mental game, and they don't blame the victimizer. They blame themselves. And then on the other hand, there's people blaming the victim. People sometimes will blame the victims of rapes, claiming that it's their fault. They dressed slutty, or they um they weren't dressed appropriate, or they shouldn't have been out at that time of the night, stuff like that. Rape and gender. So back before, uh rape was only considered to be committed by a man onto a woman, but now it could be anybody commits rape onto anyone. Um, you might have heard of a lot of prison rapes and all that. Those are guys doing that to each other. So feminists also started the first rape crisis centers to help and protect victims. So these centers would help them to stop self-blaming or other people blaming the victims for what happened. Um, and there's still a lot of struggles with them trying to get like equality on the and bring attention to like the rapes that are happening, because it's still like there's still a lot of problems with it, like marital rape, which many won't consider it being rape. It still is. But just because you're married doesn't mean that consent is implied. But just because you're married doesn't mean that it's implied. It's not. So a lot of feminists are working to take that notion away that it is, and other things with like bringing awareness to date rape, to stop people from getting drugged and all that, drugged and rape. Um, and that's my presentation. Thank you.